My name was Marta. We were Jews living in Poland. It was a nice place, but what did I know from anything? One day, our name was posted in the square. We were told we needed to gather our belongings outside. The following day, we were going to be making a journey on the trains with our families. That was how it began in 1939. It was a simple beginning to the greatest atrocities of all time. It still stings in my heart how my parents went off without me. Of course, not on purpose, but they were forced to board the train, and I was forgetful. I lost track of time. I was not good at schedules. And then when it was too late, I remember. I have never forgotten since. To this day, I am annoyingly prompt, like a fine Swiss timepiece. I wonder, even then, how did they know our names? I didn't notice at first that all of the names on the list were the names of our Jewish friends. Was there some special way to know the names of the Jewish people in a town? Some kind of list or something? Well, and then I thought, of course it's a list, and it's posted in the square, and our name is on it. But why our names? That was my biggest question. I was innocent for a while longer yet, but not so long as I wish. So my neighbor, a Gentile, her name was Kathy. Oh, she was so nice and such a good baker of Catholic food. She was round and short and had a big smile for everyone. She smelled like vanilla, she baked so much. And sometimes I would just like to stand next to her and breathe in and out that great waft of creamy vanilla all over my face. But this day, she was very serious. She asked for my house key. I gave it to her. I was scared of her very serious tone. And then she did this very strange thing. She gave my house key to her husband, Harold. And then he left the house. That's all. She said, from this time on, we should all call me Emily. I agree, but I didn't understand. She said I would probably never see my parents again, and that I had to make some drastic changes in my life. I began to argue and cry, and she slapped me in the face and said there was no time for tears, not if I wanted to live to tell my story. I don't know if I was more scared of her because she was so serious, or if I was afraid she was right. Emily was her daughter's name. Emily had died of whooping cough many years ago, and the records of her death were not kept up to date. And for one reason and another, she had never filed the death certificate at the registrar's office. She showed me where the birth certificate was kept, and then I went to the church. I had never been in a church. It had lots of candles, it was dark, and smelled like wet dust. Not pleasant, but not horrible. She showed me how to genuflect, how to cross myself and say, in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Ghost, and then to nod to the crucifix. I felt like it was a bow to a boy after I finished a dance. But she said, I have to remember to do this Every single time I go into the church, I had a crash course in Catholicism, and honestly, I felt like I was in a school play. We practiced genuflecting and crossing ourselves and bowing to the altar until I looked like a natural. How I look and how I feel were two very different things. There was nothing natural about genuflecting. And then we were joined by a priest. I understood him to be a holy man and to be respectful even if I didn't understand his faith. He took us to the back of the church and he opened the panels. And behind the panels were many, many people sitting and drinking tea and eating bread and cheese. And they were quiet. Oh, so very, very quiet. Some of the people I recognized, but before I could make a sound or say my name, my mouth was covered by the priest's big hand, so tight I thought I was going to suffocate. And he whispered to me that I needed to breathe. And I did. And then very softly, the people I recognized and the people I don't know all started to call me Emily. I wasn't introduced or anything. They knew about me before I got there. Then I noticed there was a small stack of my clothes on a chair and my mother's wedding ring sitting right on the square at the top of the pile. I saw Harold, Kathy's husband, and he smiled at me. He must have taken the key and gone to our house and gotten me some things. I didn't ask. I could tell by now nobody was kidding with me. They offered me tea and bread and cheese, and honestly, all the genuflecting made me work up an appetite. So I sat in the quiet and ate and sipped tea. Every once in a while, my throat would swell and tears would stream down my face, and the others in the rooms would nod with soft eyes. I began to feel lonely. Oh, a big, deep well of loneliness. And from that point on, I felt lonely every waking minute of the day. Until I meet Hans. He was a handsome young man, about my age. He made me laugh. He brought me flowers, and he didn't know that I was anybody other than Emily. I had been sent away to do my part at the farm. I called it my solution work. Hitler had his work, the final solution. Well, he's not the only one to have a solution. I became brave at the farm, even though it was only in my thoughts. I learned to do resistance work. I taught others how to genuflect until they looked natural at it. We had to learn to eat things without worry. There were others who were starving to death. The news from the camps was devastating. I learned that my mother and father were not kept alive long. They were older and weaker. But my brother, Otto, he was strong, and he was made to be a workhorse. He was sent off to a work camp, and I didn't learn about his life until many years later. But I kept him in my prayers always. No doom and gloom for Hans. He had a plan. I told him my solution thoughts, and he enjoyed that. We laughed together. I began to realize the only time I laughed out loud was with Hans. We couldn't meet in public. People were working so hard and were not trusting of him, but I knew him differently. They warned me against him, but it was too late. I had already given to him my heart. He had a proper job. He worked for some kind of company. He got a salary for it. Who would have thought there was money to be made during the war? I say one day, but he says it wasn't blood money or anything like that. He just has a talent to fix things, a great talent for fixing things. We didn't have much time for talk. The work to be done at the farm is back-breaking, and we had 3 different crops: wheat, corn, and potatoes. And there were probably 15 women working at the farm, and the equipment is old and it doesn't work well, which was true for a few of the women as well. And when the stalks of corn were tall, Hans and I would meet in a special spot where he couldn't be found, and it was so nice to have some conversation with someone that wasn't about the war. I didn't mean to be selfish. As I look back on it, I was just so terrified every second of the day that any respite, no matter how brief, was welcome. Then one Sunday, he said things that changed me forever. We lost track of time and where we were. We were laughing about the people in the church, and then suddenly, he got very serious. He started to talk about after the war and what life would be like. We would have a world free of filthy, stinking Jews. And then we could get married and raise a family. I was stunned. I couldn't talk. I didn't have so much to say. So I don't think he was noticing my silence. He wanted to tell me about the machines he fixed, and that because of this work, we would get a good job in Berlin after the war, and he would make so much money, we could have many children. I nodded. I realized that the important work he was doing was killing many people. I became almost a spy listening to him. I asked about the machines, and he said they only counted Jews and to help organize the train schedule. And I didn't know why the train schedules were so prompt for the war, but I had heard it was true. And he said the machines were helping to find the Jews and round them up, and then sorting them into healthy workers and those who were to be exterminated. I felt like I had been hit in the face with a brick. I kept listening. He was excited to talk and talk about these machines, and I didn't understand it all, but I knew the work he was doing probably helped to kill my family. I heard everything he had to say. Oh, I let him kiss me goodbye. He had talked so much he was late for a meeting of some sort, and I went back to the farm. I stopped another resistance worker, and I told her the story, and she told someone else. And then a week later, I got a visit from some man who said he was part of the resistance. And I told him everything Hans had said. The location of the building where he did his work, the type of work he did, everything I heard, I told to that man. He thanked me. said, in your parents' name, you have helped us to win another small battle. I cried myself to sleep that night. And the next time we need someone to work on the equipment in the farm, Hans did not come. I never saw him again, and I never asked.
I live in New York, in a cold brownstone walk-up with bad plumbing and noisy neighbors. But the rent is cheap, and I can save money and sleep in my woolens. I think sometimes the only decent thing about the place is that I can save money. Not much, mind you, but at least something every month. There is Rachel. She lives in the same building, and she's from Berlin. She came over here to America in 1939 with her family. They had only one suitcase between them, if they had anything at all. Her English is pretty good now. She practices all the time. I listen to her every Tuesday night. She reads, and I tell her how to pronounce the words. I tried to get her a job at my company, but they wouldn't even talk to her. She works at the bookstore. It's not good money, but she can chip in with the family. I work at International Business Machines, IBM for short. I was a secretary, but then the men had to go off to fight the war after the tragedy at Pearl. I've always been pretty good with numbers, so I was asked to work in the accounting department. It's not so bad. I get to see things, lots of things. I know a lot about how much money the company makes. Let me tell you, it's a bundle of money. Of course, the U.S. Congress declared that we can't make a profit from the war. I'm told that we are not profiting from the war, so I believe them. I begin to wonder, what is all this money we're making if it's not profit? Another thing I wonder about is the paper shortage. We have paper plants all over the world, yet we only sell paper to one company, De Morgue. I asked my supervisor the other day, why do we sell paper to only one company? She says, sweetheart, because they are the only company who's buying. Why else do you think? I accept that. At least I try to. But the amount of money they pay for paper is extraordinary. My supervisor says, yes, dear, and it means your paycheck, so I wouldn't worry about it if I were you. If the Germans are silly enough to waste money on paper, I say let them. It's more for us. I don't think so much about what they're paying for it. I just want to know what they're doing with the paper. But she's right, my supervisor. Means I still have a salary, and I can't complain about that. It's hard to get ahead in New York, and I can't kick a gift horse in the mouth. I got a letter the other day from De Morgue. It was very nasty, saying the last shipment of paper was shorted by 500 pounds. Like I work in the factory or something, they're threatening me. I didn't personally short them 500 pounds. I just put in the requisition for the order. It's a lot of work on my part to find out what happened. Then I have to figure out what to do about it. So I contact the warehouse that stores the paper, and their accounts show that they packed off the right amount of paper. But when the shipment arrives, it's in short supply. I am so frustrated. I'm wondering, what did they do? Eat it for lunch? Because this is such an important account and all, I go to my supervisor. She's nothing but angry. Again, like I shorted the shipment? I'm so angry at this point, I don't know if I'm coming or going. She doesn't know what to do either. She asks if I've kept the right accounts. If there's one thing, I am accurate. Nobody can slight me for my accuracy, and they can have my job if I'm wrong about what I'm doing. And I can't afford to give away my job, so I think I'm right. In the letter from DeMorgue, there's a ledger showing how much they had purchased from IBM. But there was more than paper on the ledger. They were purchased in parts for a machine. I don't generally take care of that kind of accounting. That's handled by Sarah across the hall. But I go and ask her, in a subtle sort of way, I say, does this DeMorgue company purchase a lot of machine parts? She says so much that she also begins to wonder what they're doing with the parts. Selling them to the Russians? Now I'm curious. Do they purchase the machines from IBM too? She says they do. But she also says these machines don't do anything but sort paper, punch holes, so they aren't good for anything much. We laugh. Fat chance the Germans got to win the war when they spent all their money on useless machines. We agree that the Germans are stupid and have no head for business, and I laugh all the way back to my desk. Finally, my supervisor says to give them a credit for the missing paper and to make sure the warehouse is more accurate in their counting. This is all happening on a Tuesday, and I go home that night and Rachel comes over to talk American. Sometimes I wish I could learn her language, but she tells me that would not be such a good idea. Still, I think it would be interesting. Rachel sees I'm in a bad mood, and she starts asking me about my work. I don't mean to, but I wind up telling her the whole story. She's very interested in the machines and says in such a serious way, the Nazis are not stupid. If they have the machines, it must be to win the war. I can't understand what those machines would have to do with winning a war. We go on to our reading lesson. She reads to me from the New York Times. I don't get a chance to read it that often, so it's nice. Then she mentions the name of a town, Lichterfeld, and I stop her and I say, hey, that's the same town, Lichterfeld, that says they were shorted the paper. We both get a little hysterical, thinking we've solved a mystery or something. In this town, people were getting yanked out of their houses and thrown into buses and trains, and old people were sent off to concentration camps, and young people were sent off in another direction. But these were only Jewish people. My neighbor starts to bare her soul. She wonders how the Germans know so much about the Jews, where we're all living, working, and what we're all doing with our lives. Her voice is shaky, and I get a little scared. I say, listen, sweetheart, what's going on over there is horrible. I gotta agree with you. But you're an American now. We're not part of that war. We're here to help you people. Honest. But she keeps on going on about how these machines must mean something. And what could it be? We stopped talking American for this night. We sat in the quiet instead.
and my business burned to the ground. I could make no effort to save it. I would die making the effort, not because the fire would take me, but because the soldiers standing guard will. They know about me now. Before this horrible war, my husband and I own a machine shop. He fixes machines like no other. I sew for people. We make our good lives together. And then, when the Depression hit, it was very, very difficult to make any money. And then it started to get better as Hitler came to power. But he had all these horrible ideas about exterminating Jews, like the Jews are little bugs or something. Jean-Luc was forced to go to war. He didn't like that, I think. I say, with all my heart. But he did not think it was a real war, or that it would last. Not like World War I. That was a real war. And we lost. So why do it again so soon? He was too young to fight in World War I, but now he was the right age. He could work in some way for the war. We scrapped over the idea of it, but soon he left. I was to run the machine shop and sell the parts and do the sewing. Oh, I was working around the clock and still not making any money. And then one day, a man came to my shop. He noticed I did not have a swastika in my window. Everybody has a swastika in their windows to show their loyalty to the fatherland. He said he could work on the engines that needed repair, and he could teach me. I accepted his help. What else could I do? Nobody else was offering me any help, and he could teach me. He was too old to fight in the war, and he was doing his part by helping out wherever he could. Fine, I thought, that is fine by me. He taught me, and we became friends. And one day, he asked me a very important question. He asked if I could still sew clothes for people. I said I didn't have enough time to sew for people. They could sew for themselves if they had to. And I said that I had to work on engines. That would be better money for me. But then, he said the clothes were for people who were trying to leave the country. Oh, that made me curious. He went on to say it was for the resistance, to help get the Jews out of the country safe. I think a bit. I agreed to help. He also did something very, very strange. He put a swastika in my window so that the people of the town would know my loyalty. I was angry at first, but then I thought, nobody will search my home and my sewing room if I look like I am a loyal. I see how smart my new friend is. From that time on, I would work during the day at the machines, and at night I would sew. Any clothes I had finished for the people to wear, they would be collected at night. Claude would take the finished clothes away and bring them to a safe spot. Someone else would come and collect the clothes and take them away. This went on for weeks and weeks, and I hardly slept for the sewing. And soon after the swastika went up in the window, I had a visit for some soldiers. They were looking to buy parts for a machine. They asked for a type of part I had never heard of, but they found something in my shop, and they bought it. Then they came back for more. Claude told me to be very friendly with the soldier and to find out why they are buying all these parts. Claude also told me that he would be leaving soon, but said he would come and pick up the clothes at night. He told me to put the clothes in the rubbish bin out at the back of the machine shop, and I did like he said. The clothes were gone the next day. It was always the hardest to work on the children's clothes, but he would take them too. And I would think, oh, those little children were getting out of the country safe to live a better day. I got to know the soldiers. They were very easy to get to know. a wink and a nod from a loyal, almost young woman, and they were all over themselves with laughter and hooting. I would put on fancy makeup and do my hair and shorten my skirt, but still, they would not talk about why they needed the machine parts. Every night now, Claude would ask, why do they want those parts? Where do you order them? I order everything from a place in Munich, Dem Hoog. I didn't know it from anything, but a soldier said it saved them a trip to Munich, and that my parts were fine. In fact, I had the best parts they had ever seen. I tried not to notice the Nazi humor. I needed to get my answer. I was part of the resistance now, and my work was helping to save people. So I could get shot, no matter what. Better, it is for something I believe in. I laugh at the jokes and give them a little private smile and a wink. I would think, this is for the children, and give them another wink. And they didn't know the difference. Then one day, Claude brings me some liqueur in a brown bottle. He says to give it to the soldiers the next time they visit. It is contraband, of course. He says to use it wisely. I think I'd like to drink it myself, but I know I cannot. It would not be the way of a woman who is a loyal. I wait until they come, and I leave it out in a place where I might not see it, but the soldiers do. They fall for the bait like herring. I took my time counting out the parts so they would drink more and more. And by the time I finished counting, they were ready to talk. I began slow, asking about the parts, telling them that I wanted to do more for the war than just sell these little parts. And they look at each other with suspicious eyes. And then I go on to say that if I could get a job at a place where I was putting the parts on the machine, then that would be doing more for the war. And they say only special people get to put the parts on the machines. Well, of course, it wasn't the soldiers. And then they are drunk. They are drunk enough that I can take a swig of the liquor, and when they see that, they laugh and finish the bottle and collapse on the floor. I ask what the machines do, that it's so important, that it has to have special workers fix on the parts. I say, my husband is a machinist, and he doesn't get to do special things like that. And then one of the soldiers says, the machines count the stinking Jews in every single town in Germany. They all roar with pride. They say the machine is called a hollerith, and that it will make us win the war. I wonder, I say out loud, how could a machine do that kind of work? And they say, it is a very special kind of machine. I have to agree. It's not fair that the machine is smarter than me. Then the soldiers leave. They stumble away like broken wagons, happy with their parts. I know it will be a matter of time before they realize that I have asked too many questions. That same night when Claude arrives, I tell him about the hollerith, and he is shocked and goes sheet white like sand. We both get out as many clothes as we can, and the sewing machine, and morning comes, and I have to take refuge across the street. Claude says, by nightfall I must get out of town. I will go to another place and do other kinds of resistance work. I think about my husband and wonder if he has become like these soldiers. I don't think about that for long. I can't. It's all too much to take in at one time. In the dawn, I see the soldiers again. They have come to their senses quicker than I thought. They came to search the house. They found my attic with all of the clothes for sewing. I had emptied the money tin into my pocket, and they rooted around the house like pigs in a trough, hoping to find me and kill me. But they do not find me. The best they can do is set the house on fire. I watch it burn across the street. The commander comes soon to order them back to the work camp. I realize I have been holding my breath for what seems like hours. This happened to me many times over before the war is done.
I don't understand such hate. On and on and on with these cards and this war and over. And I just don't understand it all. We get the paper, reams and reams of paper, and it's heavy and thick, and we have to cut it into cards. All day long, I'm loading paper into a machine that cuts the paper into cards, and then walking them over to the other side of the building where they punch holes in the cards. It looks like they are ruining everything I'm doing. All day, it's like this. I want to be at home with my little boy Peter. I am worn to the bone. And Helmut, he expects more out of me than the others. It is hard to be married to a man and work with him all day. But it is for the war, he says, and I can't argue with that. But I question him about many things he says and does, and he is starting to despise me for that. I just want to understand, that is all. I ask him, how are these cards supposed to help the war effort? Just yesterday, I talked with Helmut. He says, don't question, just get it done. Am I not his wife? Don't I deserve respect for being the mother of his child? And my sweet boy, I want him to grow up in a world where there is no war, only peace. Helmut says, once we win the war, we will have peace and duty to the fatherland. He's so sure of himself and of the Third Reich. Because of these silly cards, he thinks we will win. I don't believe everything he says. I think it makes him angry. There was a time when I did believe everything he said. Sometimes I remember the summer that we worked in the community garden just outside of town. We shared so much then. We were making beautiful plans for our future together. We talked of getting married, how many children we would have, where we wanted to raise them, the farm we would have. So much about our lives had been about us. And now there is no longer us. This war has torn us apart. Ever since he joined the war effort. When we started at the factory, we didn't believe in the war, but we needed jobs and money, and it was something we could do together. But now, he's seduced by the ideas of Hitler. And I think he craves power. He sees the crowds roar for Hitler, and he fancies himself for doing his part. But I think after the war, he will be himself again. I must believe this. For our life together. I should be thankful he's not wearing those ugly uniforms of the German army, but he might as well. He demands, how he yells and barks his orders at us. At home last night, I was so tired when I left the factory. I dragged home on the bus. Helmut came home later than me, whiskey on his breath. He stays late at work to celebrate the work effort. We are coming closer all the time, he says to me. Close to what, I'm not sure, but he's happy we're getting there. I had to cook dinner and feed little Peter, and I was falling asleep at the stove. Little Peter was tired and hungry and cranky. He was crying and crying so loud, nothing would stop him. The food wasn't ready to eat. We had no crackers, and our rations were nearly out. Then I found a card in my pocket, all punched with holes. I gave it to Peter. He liked it, made him quiet right down. He's teasing now. As he noshed on the card, he laughed, and I smiled, and we sang songs. Finally, dinner was ready. Helmut came through the door. He joined in the singing. We were laughing, just like the way it used to be. We were enjoying each other and the time. I didn't care that there was whiskey on his breath. It made me think that I am right. Things will go back to normal after the war. We will be a family again. Then Peter dropped the chewed punch card on the floor. And I didn't notice. I didn't care. I was putting out our dinner, singing and loving my family. And suddenly, Helmut slams his fist across my face, so swift and so hard that I thought my neck was broken. And again he moves to strike me, and I threw a hot dinner at him, and he backed away. He started to shout about the card that Peter had chewed. I couldn't understand anything he was saying. We started shouting, and Peter started to cry, and it was such confusion. Helmut left the house, and then I fed little Peter a little bit. He was too upset to eat. Then off to bed he went. Once it was quiet, I cleaned up a bit. I picked up the card, and I set it on the table, and I stared at it for a long time. What do these things mean? It's important now. I must know. Why do some people get to know things and others are forced to go along with crazy ideas? Then I start to think, I'm just going along. I'm keeping quiet. Don't say anything against the war effort. Why, we are all such good Germans. Day after day, we have to do more. Push, and for what? Why can't he just tell me? He treats me like I am a complete stranger. The curfew is getting more intense. He shouldn't be out late, and I hope he will come home soon. I see his papers on the counter by the door. He will be questioned if he's wandering around late at night. I am scared. I want him back. But I don't want him back. I'm so confused. Every day I wonder when I will ever have a clear head again. Then I think I will make him tell me. What is so important about these cards that it makes him cruel to me? Sometimes that seems like my solution, and other days it feels like that will only make for more problems. I overheard the other day that the transport trains were coming through more often, and they're full of people. Someone said that it's the Jews being moved to camps. And what does that have to do with the war and with these blasted cards? Why does the army want to move the Jews? I know we are not supposed to like them, But could they really be the cause of all our troubles? They never did anything to me. I mean, I can remember Rebecca in my writing class, and she was so funny. She could write some stories that kept me in stitches. And I was not the only one laughing. The professor was right in the middle of it. I heard a story from another woman who witnessed this horrible thing. They said Rebecca's mother was standing in the street. She was sobbing as they were forced into a big truck. When I asked her where they were being taken, she just looked at me. No answer. Just the way Helmut looks at me. But still, I asked, why were they being taken away? They said, because they're Jews. They said that all the Jews were being taken from their homes and into camps. Camps, I said. Why camps? They didn't do anything to us, I say. But I was told later that if the person was strong, they would go to a work camp. I'm supposed to believe everything anyone says to me? I know better than that. Everyone says you're supposed to hate the Jews. It's because of them that this war started. That's what Hitler keeps saying. He said last week on the radio that we must rid ourselves of the filth, the wretched. I couldn't keep listening. His ranting and yelling makes my head hurt. I just can't keep listening to all this rubbish. But I can't say that to Helmut. I see that he is beginning to believe all the things that Hitler says. Next, I hear the door shut and then realize I am not alone with my thoughts anymore. It's Helmut, come back home. His door closed behind him and he stands above me now. I see fear in his eyes. He who strikes me has fear in his eyes. I wonder why. I ask my questions of him. I ask why these cars are so important to win the war. What he says next is more astonishing than I could ever have imagined. He told me that the cards are important because they are like people. Each card identifies one Jew. The way the holes are punched tells us who this Jew is and where they live. Then they have to be rounded up and sent away on the trains. He tells me that I should be grateful to have such important work. And if I could only understand how important it is that we are helping in this way. It's because of these cards that we are able to get so many Jews. But more than that, the punch cards help to organize the trains and keep the country running like clockwork. We are efficient because of these cards. The enemy is not efficient, and they will lose no matter how they try. Efficiency is going to make us win the war, and we will rid our country of the filthy Jews. He knows that I don't see the Jews in the same way. But now, I'm scared of him. I am afraid of what he will do to me and to Peter. I don't understand such hate. I didn't know how much he had changed. But now I can see with my own eyes, and I can hear that we don't share the same life anymore.
Hitler is the most brilliant man to live in our time, maybe in all time. In fact, I am sure when history is written, we will see his brilliance outshines everyone who came before him. He is going to restore our country to its glory, and we are going to be the envy of all other countries. I am so proud to work at the Omag on the Olorit machine. This is the machine that will win the war for us. This is the best place to work in all of Germany. This is why I get commendation from the boss. I work very hard to make sure that the work I do is accurate. But that is not all I do. I make sure the work of the people in my area is accurate too. I don't ever say these things out loud to anyone in particular, but my attitude shows in my work. I'm telling this to my favorite underling. Her name is Heidi. She wants to get along very well with the men in the building, and I tell her how to get their attentions. It is important to show them that you are faithful to the Third Reich. The best way to do that is respect your work. If you treat your work with great importance, then you will be noticed. She will get nylons and chocolates one day, but first I tell her she has to earn the respect. I tell her that in 1933, I was just a girl, and I started going from door to door, collecting information and making sure we got all the exact information from every single house on every single street. It was back-breaking labor. My feet would ache until they bled, but I would get up the next day and go collecting more and more information. Then soon, I had stacks and stacks of information, and I was told that soon this information, people's genders, age, work, color of hair, all of it was important to repairing our country from the devastation of the Depression. I make sure she understands that it is because of the Jews that we are in the Depression. Some of the younger people forget that, or they don't bother to remember. Of course, you know how we landed in the Depression. It was because of the Jews. I tell her this so she will understand the importance of what we are doing. Making sure we know where all the Jews live and work is critical to our success and our future as a country. We lost the First World War because of them. It was such a humiliation, I cannot stand it. But in World War I, we didn't have the census. That is the most important thing we could have done to save the country. It is so important to make the cards accurate. Then I tell her the story of the second census. This is the most brilliant part of the strategy for Deutschland to win back its supremacy. Hitler knew that taking the census and learning who was a practicing Jew was important. But then he thought, what about all those people who have Jewish bloodlines? You see, we need to know about all those people who have dead relatives, who maybe don't think of themselves as Jewish. Say, for example, I tell her, perhaps your friend has a grandparent who is several generations past, who was Jewish. That friend still carries the bloodlines of a Jewish person. If there is one drop of Jewish blood in your veins, it could mean trouble for Germany. You see the danger in this. Heidi was smart to keep listening. So the second census was meant to find out who has Jew family members in their bloodlines. What person has grandparents or great-grandparents or great-great-grandparents? And then they should be on the list and they get special cards as well. This kind of registration campaign will make us the most powerful country in the world. I hope she can see that. That is the reason why I come in early and go home late at night. That is why I am respected by the officers. I wake up in the morning thinking to myself, each and every card punch is a credit to our task. Each card means we are one step closer to sorting out the poison that is infecting our culture and making sure the Jews are separated from the Gentiles with these cards. I don't say this very often, but I will tell you the most exciting part of my day. When I get my stack of census forms all filled out so nicely, I wonder how many Jews I will meet today. How many will I capture with my holorit? I start to calibrate my holorit, first the age, then height, hair color, onto work status, gender. And then we get to the more interesting ideas. Here we have family heritage. We find the mixed bloods, the homosexuals. And the best is when I find a Jew. My heart pounds fast, like when I had my first kiss. So sweet to know that I am doing my part to build a great nation. I have power over people, and they do not even know who I am. I take special care when I see that I am locating and uncovering one of the filthy. I am cleaning up Deutschland. Then I calibrate my holorit machine. I punch my card very carefully and pass it on to the next. Sometimes I get to a Jew who requires special handling, which means extermination, number 8 on the card. And I wonder if the others are as proud as I am to know that they are doing their part for the fatherland.